It was 10 years ago when I was first taught how to use a DAW, a Digital Audio Workstation. Yeah, I'm not really going to be saying DAW, because with my accent it sounds more like I'm talking about a door that you open and close rather than a DAW, so from now on I'm going to refer to Digital Audio Workstations as DAWs. But yeah, it was 10 years ago where I first got trained in how to use Digital Audio Workstations, and that was with a very, very old version of Pro Tools. I think it was running on a Windows like 98 or Windows 2000 PC and everything. It was old even for them. And yeah, I've delved with a couple of other ones here or there. I've done about 3 or 4 years with Logic, and I used, I think, Cubase a little bit, and I've messed around with Ableton Live once. But for the most part, I've just been using good old Pro Tools. You know, it's what I've trained to use, it's what I've used all this time, and I'll admit, I don't do a huge amount of actual, production. I tend to do a lot more, like, gigging, writing, everything else, but I've been getting more into it recently, more wanting to actually, record my own things and sort of mix a little bit more, get a bit better at mixing, get a bit better at mastering, and actually be able to make recordings sound really, really good. And so I've been using Pro Tools a little bit more, but I'm finding more and more that I feel like I've fallen out of love with it. I used to find it to be my favourite, and in between spells of using Logic, I'd always come back to Pro Tools and just far prefer using it, but recently, a lot of things I'm just finding I'm not enjoying so much about it anymore, so I would like to actually look at some other digital audio workstations and possibly move into using those. So why would I want to move away from Pro Tools? Well, there's a good few reasons, and one of them is actually workflow, which interestingly enough was the reason I stayed with Pro Tools for so long. Like I said, it was the DAW I was trained to use, and it's the one I have by far and away the most experience using, but there are certain little bits of it that I just really, really dislike, and as technology has progressed, I'm saying that because the version of Pro Tools I'm using is actually one of the far older versions. I know a lot of people tend to sort of find a version that they want and then just stick to that, so it's a bit out of date by this point. But I found that other pieces of software I've used going into the future are adding in features which I now miss whenever I go back to using Pro Tools, and so I want something newer. And of course I could always just upgrade to the next version of Pro Tools, but I just want to, I'm really curious to see if the grass can be greener on the other side, so I want to try out something else. The other reason being cost, as sort of said earlier. Pro Tools is incredibly, incredibly expensive, and I know that there are some other DAWs out there, such as Cubase, which are also devilishly expensive, but there are some kind of cheap ones, like a couple I'm going to look at a little bit later in this video, which seems to be a little bit more reasonably priced, but still very, very powerful, and should hopefully give me all of the more updated features that I'm hoping for. And finally, is I'm sick and tired of dealing with iLok. And yeah, if you've not used Pro Tools before, then iLok is the physical DRM. I've got it plugged into my computer right now, I'm not going to unplug it. It's physical DRM, so it's this actual dongle which you have to have plugged in at all times to make sure that the piece of software works. And the software comes bundled with it, and registering and everything has just been a headache. Every time something's gone wrong with it, it's been a headache. And yeah, I'd rather just not have to deal with it any longer. And so that will actually reduce quite a few of the possible suggestions. So if you were considering suggesting something like Cubase to me, I know they use something very similar, so I'm just not willing to have to use something like that again. And as previously mentioned, I was using an older version of Pro Tools, and it's still, I think it's just a 32-bit version. And my computer's way more powerful than that should be now, and I feel like I'm really restricting myself by using something that's still just stuck to 32-bit libraries rather than, using all the 64-bit libraries, hence why I do want to upgrade and move forward, rather than just staying with what I've already got, even though I am fairly comfortable with the workflow. My previous gripes aside, I could just stick with it, but like I said, I want to take advantage of all the new features that are coming out. And one of the big things that made me want to think about this is the idea of MIDI 2.0. So I think I've spoken enough now about why I don't really want to be using Pro Tools anymore and I want to try a different digital audio workstation. So let's now have a look at what I do want to have in a new DAW, new digital audio workstation. So first and foremost, it has to be cross-platform. I need it to be at least Windows and Mac compatible. Although you do get an extra point if it's also Linux compatible as well. As a working musician, the stereotype is that you're going to mostly come across people with Macs, although that's not entirely true, but you want to be able to install this piece of software on pretty much any computer you come across, in case you are working with someone who, say, might not use the same piece of software, but you want to use that piece of software. So regardless as to whether I'm in front of a PC or a Macintosh, I can get it to work. So that does actually take a couple out of the running, so that means no Logic as it's only Mac compatible, and no Q-Tractor as it's only Linux compatible. And especially I know with things like Logic, I've used Logic before, I do know that it's quite good. It's just, like I said, I want something which I can then go and use on every computer, rather than being locked down to just one format. It must of course be low latency, have good compatibility of lots of different audio interfaces. Good plugin support is obviously another big up. No physical DRM, so please nothing that uses anything like the iLock, so you know that puts Cubase out of the running. And one big thing which I've noticed as I've been doing research on this is the workflow. It's got to be sort of actual audio recording and then mixing and stuff like that first, and then MIDI sequencing second. I will be using MIDI sequencing and like MIDI drums and other things like that and virtual instruments, but what comes first and foremost is recording actual audio and, you know, having the tools and the horsepower to be able to mix and master that well, and MIDI comes second. Although I have heard some people say that it's really, really good for recording audio, so I might consider it, but I know that puts Ableton Live a little bit lower. That means things like LMMS are just out, because I don't think they can do audio at all. Because I record things like rock, metal, jazz and blues, that's got to be sort of the main focus of the DAW, rather than just, you know, being just based around sequencing, although I do need a little bit of that functionality as well.
So just a seventh point I need to add into this is that I absolutely refuse to use anything that has like a monthly pay subscription. If I'm going to be paying for it, I'd like to pay for an outright version, and I don't mind, you know, if I have to later pay for an upgrade later on. But as far as monthly subscriptions or like quarter monthly subscriptions or anything like that go, I'm just not going to consider any DAW that uses that whatsoever. Okay? Back to the video.
So currently I have 3 DAWs in mind, although I'm going to open this up to the comment section, so if you want to comment down below any that I don't put in this, ones you think I've missed and you're thinking, Adam, how the hell could you not be considering this DAW, then please put it in, because I do want to test out a lot of the ones that I get sent. I want to find the right one for me, you know? And so I want to cast my net out and see what there is and just try as many DAWs as I possibly can. So the first out of the 3 I'm heavily considering, I actually owe a thanks to a person I went to university with, Stephen, who told me this, God, what would have been at this point, about 7 years ago, which is Reaper. And I see this all across YouTube, all across the internet. It seems to be super, super popular. I'm heavily considering this one. I'm really liking what I'm seeing with it. I've just never used it, so I'm going to have to try that out. It seems to be sort of somewhat Pro Tools-ish, so, you know, so there's going to be some level of sort of comfort already there, I'm hoping. It's completely cross-compatible, it's in all 3 of the operating systems I mentioned earlier. Customizable, that's always a good word for me. I love being able to customize the interface on things I'm using. Yeah, it just seems to be super powerful. It seems to just be the one that's recommended, so that one I'm definitely going to be trying. The next one on my list is one I've played around with once or twice, but I can kind of see after using it a bit, I'm really going to have to delve in and read the manual on how to use this one. And it is DAW, which is a free and open source digital audio workstation. And I think if I've read it rightly from the history of it, it was built to literally be a free and open source re-implementation of something like a rebuilding of Pro Tools. So I know that there's going to be quite a bit, and going from the interface, even though, you know, colour scheme wise it looks very different, there definitely are similarities you can see in there. I've seen quite a few people on the internet show how powerful this thing can be. Although a lot of the power I'm seeing from it seems to be coming from people who are doing loads and loads of MIDI sequencing. Like I said earlier, that's kind of my secondary thing, not really my primary goal with this. But I know, seeing as it's based on Pro Tools, that it clearly will be able to record and mix quite well. And actually, as of I think 2 or 3 days before the time of this recording, the most recent version, DAW 6, came out. So I'm really looking forward to trying that out. And the last one I've been looking at is one I feel like actually came from left of field, and it's actually a fork of the previous entry, DAW, and this is Harrison Mix Bus, made by Harrison Consoles, I think the company is called, which is actually like a proper, you know, physical recording studio console making company that have created this based on DAW. It's a fork, which is kind of the like open source term for, they've taken the code of a project which is open source and then made their own project out of it by using that freely available code. So it's got DAW as a base, but they've added on loads of stuff on top of it, and I've seen the Spectre Sounds studio video on it, and that makes it seem really, really good, so it's another one that seems quite interesting. So those are the main 3 I'm going to be trying out for now. If you have any suggestions of which ones I should be using, then please suggest them in the comments below. Is FL Studios Fruity Loops, is that even still a thing? Is that worth looking at in today's day and age? I haven't heard about it much for a while. Let me know if you think it is. Just let me know if you think there's a particular DAW I've missed and what you think I should use. Now, how am I going to be actually testing these out? What I'm going to do is, I feel like even after you do a whole song, you still can't completely understand it, but you can get a good idea for the feel and whether you're going to work well with a digital audio workstation after you record a whole song with it. Once I sort of put together all of the digital audio workstations I'd like to test out, I'm going to do a cover on each of them. Just record a cover of a song, you know, It's going to have to be like MIDI drums, but actual guitars, you know, recorded, you know, DI bass, vocals, everything like that. To get a real feel for it, you know, I'd have to, you know, record on it, I'd have to mix, I'd have to master it, make it sound the best it possibly can. And I feel like that'll give me a good idea as to which ones I do and I don't like. So let me know if there are any others that I've missed out, and yeah, there should be another video follow-up on this one soon after I've done a little bit of work on each of them. And please, 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 if you do have an idea as which DAW I should use, please put it in the comments below. And yeah, if you enjoyed this, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. And this is Audacity.